I love playing bad games, and Steam happens to have thousands of them. Most of these are titles that are so bad they'll make you regret the fact that you bought them or even spent your time trying them out. Scams, cash grabs, even just poorly optimized projects. But if you want the real gems beneath the garbage, you're going to have to wade through the muck. But that's what I'm here for. Today, I'm going to be taking another look at 9 of the worst reviewed games on Steam. I chose different projects from among the mixed, negatives, and overwhelmingly negatives. If you've seen this series before, then you already know that I try to give each game on this list a fair shake. I attempt to see both the good and the bad with each title. My intention is not just to trash all of these poorly received games, but to see where they failed and maybe where they succeed. Also, to ultimately understand them, to understand why something is good, it helps to understand why something is bad. If you enjoy the video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe, as it really helps me out. You can also subscribe to my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel further. The link is in the description. Hey Dad, it's me, your favorite son, and today I'd like to once again talk about bad games. This message is sponsored by Raycon. This holiday season, there's one gift that everyone is going to need, and that's Raycon's Essential Open Earbuds. These earbuds let you stay connected to your surroundings while still enjoying your favorite music, podcasts, or even unnecessarily long videos about video games. And this Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you can save up to 30% on all Raycon audio products. Raycon's open earbuds keep your ears open while delivering a crystal clear sound. They sit just outside your ear canal, so you can stay tuned into traffic, coworkers, or whatever is happening around you without losing out on music or podcast quality. Lightweight and all day comfortable, they never feel bulky, and the secure fit means that they stay put whenever I'm at the gym or on a walk. Honestly, I usually wear Raycon's Essential earbuds, but I've been working in the open earbuds to my daily routine more and more often. They're just extremely nice for when I'm doing things and I still need to be aware. If I'm listening to music while I'm skating or walking my dog, I can still hear everything that's happening around me and stay aware so that I don't get, pancaked by a semi or something. And of course, keep in mind that ordering Raycon products with my link is a great way to support the channel as well. And Black Friday is right around the corner. Raycon audio products are up to 30% off site-wide. From everyday essentials to the latest releases, it's the perfect time to upgrade your sound or just get ahead on gifting. But these early deals won't last long, so shop now before they're gone. Just click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/yourfavoritesonopen to save on Raycon audio products site-wide. That's buyraycon.com/yourfavoritesonopen or clicking the link in the description. Now back to the video. Pizza Shop Simulator is a simulation game released on July 4th, 2025. It currently has negative review status on Steam with 17 total reviews, 17% of those being positive. This game is kind of an atrocity, and I don't say that about many games in these videos because I generally don't want to bash stuff just for the purpose of bashing things. Part of this is because the game uses so much AI to create its art. AI is used to create the image for the Steam store page, the loading screens, the cutscenes, if you want to call them that, and the main menu thumbnails for the mode select. The game also seems to use AI for the in-game voices, which are just awful.
Carl, please drive carefully. If we crash here, no one will find us.
Okay, my love, and I don't intend to have an accident with this car. It's my father's car.
But the experience of playing Pizza Shop Simulator isn't quite that easy to describe, so I'll just take you through my journey playing it. There are 5 modes in the game, which the game itself sometimes refers to as mods, and other times it refers to them as modes, so I'm sure this has to be a misspelling. I started with Shop Management, the mode that seems like it's supposed to let you run a pizzeria, like a pizza simulator shop game would. The game begins with a jumble of text explaining the basic concept of leveling up and stats. The shop inside is littered with trash, so the first mission is to pick it all up. I picked up every piece of trash that I could, but it only got me about 3/4 of the way to completing the mission, and there was no trash in sight. I got a call from the Mafia about the fact that they wanted to take a cut of my earnings for protection money. There were 2 options for response, but it only let me choose the one where I agreed to pay them. So I then decided to explore the outside town where I found this. Then I tried to use the computer to maybe order some supplies or something. I couldn't do that, but I could play a variety of terrible mini games that almost crashed the whole game itself. When I exited the computer, though, all of the trash had reappeared, and the game was so bugged it wouldn't let me interact with anything. So I had to try one of the other game modes. The next one was called A Courier Story, and sees us, I believe, following a man who is delivering pizza to a place far out in the woods. The intro is just peak AI slop.
James, come here, brother. You have an order to deliver. Your address is far, so you can take my car.
Thanks, boss. I love this car. It's the American dream.
The actual game itself is just us driving to the destination as it gets darker and darker, but the driving is so abysmal. Going any sort of real speed means that turning will cause us to roll the car almost immediately. Luckily, the developer realized this, and instead of fixing the driving, they just put an automatic reset button in. This still made the whole journey take forever, and when I got to the house, the brakes didn't work, and I ran the car off of a cliff, and then it got stuck. So I decided to try another game mode. This one is just called Scenario, and says, this mod includes in-game scenario. Here you are tasked with bringing money to a drug deal that takes place with Walt and Jesse from Breaking Bad. The police show up, you get arrested, and have to escape jail by just running out the doors. You then pick up a gun and have to shoot your way through the tunnels. At certain parts in the tunnels, you have to climb up things, which the game is never really clear exactly how you're supposed to do this because it says press Q, later control. I eventually got it to work somehow, but it was less than consistent. The next game mode is called A Lone Woman and sees a couple making a drive to a cabin in the woods. It's basically the same thing as the driving scenario before, but this time I was actually able to make it to the destination. But the conversation along the way is all AI and is the craziest thing I've seen.
Carl, the place you inherited is deep in the jungle. It's almost impossible to live here.
Yes, I know that. I haven't been here since I was a kid. I just want to spend a good weekend with you. Did you hear about the guy with the car at the pizza place? A couple disappeared in our neighborhood this year.
These places are really creepy. But after all, this is a forest. Things like this can happen, even if rarely. Maybe the man just wanted to scare us.
When we get there, the couple goes to sleep, and we wake up in the middle of the night to find our wife dead. The main character is then attacked, and the scenario ends with this epilogue. 2 days later, a forester alerted the police that the windows of the house had been smashed. The police arrived at the scene and found Emma's lifeless body. The police launched a detailed investigation, and it is not yet clear what happened to Carl. To be continued. Spoiler alert, it's not continued. The final mode is called Open World and Car Repair, and this mode places us at a house where there's a car that needs fixed. We can wash it and refill it with some gas and place some car parts on it, but the rest of the car is missing. I searched for these parts for a while, but couldn't find them. This game is somehow simultaneously a pizza-themed horror game, a straight-up horror game, a jail escape game, and a car repair simulator, while not being a pizza shop simulator at all. The pizza shop part of this game just does not function, and the game reads like the developer just decided halfway through that they wanted to randomly add a bunch of other games into it, that they'd rather be making a horror game or a car repair simulator than a pizza shop simulator, but didn't feel like making another game. Also, I just can't abide by the amount of AI that this game uses. I understand if you might not be able to afford voice actors or an illustrator for cover art, but there are creative solutions around monetary issues. That's the whole reason you decided to make games in the first place, right? Was to be creative? Why take these shortcuts? That's not to mention the copyright issues or the environmental issues also caused by AI. It's almost unavoidable at this point, but that doesn't mean that we can't try and interact with it as little as possible. Also, I'm pretty sure one of the Steam screenshots just straight up has Kiryu from the Yakuza games in it. Pizza Shop Simulator is just a smoothie of blended games that don't go well together, like onions and olives and bananas and pickles. These things are all fine on their own or in other dishes, but blended together, it creates a concoction that is just abysmal. Necromancer's Revenge is a top-down roguelike game developed by Golden Pick Games. It was released on November 12th, 2024 and currently has negative review status on Steam with 12 total reviews, 8% of those being positive. In some ways, Necromancer's Revenge feels like the 2022 action roguelike auto-attacker Vampire Survivors. You play a character who runs around defeating waves of enemies, slowly powering up and collecting items and abilities. But Necromancer's Revenge tries to bring something new to the scene of games, working off the back of the fundamentals that Vampire Survivors created. The main thing that it brings to the table is active skills. In Vampire Survivors, all attacks are idle, automatically firing projectiles based on the items that you pick up and develop. But in Necromancer's Revenge, there are 3 types of items: summons, totems, and spells. Spells function mostly like Vampire Survivors' weapons. They fire out projectiles automatically, mostly in random directions. There are some that are more fixed, like an aura that damages enemies surrounding you, which directly resembles the onion weapon from Vampire Survivors, but the totems and summons are active skills that need to be triggered to be used. The biggest problem with Necromancer's Revenge is that it's just so damn hard to figure out. It doesn't tell you anything when you start the game, and it took me at least an hour of experimenting to figure out what I was doing. I'm still not entirely sure how the game works, so I can't say for sure. From what I can tell, you can kill enemies with your items and summons. These enemies drop blue, green, and red gems. The gems all serve different functions. The green gems are essentially XP, and they level up your character. Just like in any game belonging to this genre, leveling up lets you choose from 3 randomized upgrades. These upgrades range from straightforward to completely nebulous. Some of them are as simple as giving you more max HP or MP, but others are listed as things like summon spawn cooldown reduction. You might think that this means how quickly your summon skills cool down, but they don't really have a cooldown. They're just an instant cast. I think what this is actually supposed to mean is how quickly your summons can actually attack. This is the same for your totems and spells because there are associated upgrades for those as well, and it sort of seems like they attack faster when you get these upgrades, but I couldn't really tell. The blue gems are a currency that you spend in what I think is called the Ghost Shop. On the main map, there are 3 structures that you can visit. You can get red gems from the enemies and deposit them into either the Ghost Shop or the Graveyard. Activating the Graveyard will give us a chest with either 1 or 2 random items. The Ghost Shop will allow you to purchase items with blue gems. You can also spend red gems at the boss door near the top of the screen to speed up the timer that's also at the top of the screen. When this timer reaches 0, the boss appears and we have to try and kill him, which I found almost impossible to actually do. In addition to the game being nearly incomprehensible with no explanations or tutorials to assist you, it's also incredibly unbalanced and poorly designed. For example, when you go to the Ghost Shop, if you already have an item in your bottom slot inventory, let's say the standard monster summon, then it should just automatically put an upgrade in the store. Sometimes in the store you can get upgrades for these items, but also sometimes you can get a repeat item. And for some reason, there's a system where if you buy a repeat item, then it upgrades the item to the next tier automatically, like the 2048 game or something. But sometimes lower tier items will appear in the store and you can just buy those and then have a duplicate for no reason. And again, I learned all of these things by testing things out because the game does not tell you any of this, and it also isn't intuitive. The whole game is really based around these totems and summons, but you can also build into spells and magic and just have a character that's auto-slinging huge projectiles across the map. Or you can summon a ton of small minions and then use your totems to power them up or protect them when attacking enemies. That core idea is actually really interesting, and I liked that part of the game. A system that's sort of half passive, half active could be cool, but all of the problems listed so far just don't really do that idea justice. I don't think I mentioned this yet either, but the movement controls are defaulted to the arrow keys, and you use the QWERTY keys for the skills, which is just really awkward and also unintuitive. Like I said before as well, the boss is just incredibly difficult to kill. I got to the boss with a ton of minions and they just wouldn't attack him. I then got to the boss with even more minions and made sure they were all standing on his spawn spot before I summoned him, and they just got wiped out immediately. I even tried to use totems that should absolutely melt him, but they wouldn't attack him either. I really don't think this game needs a ton of work to get into a good state. Unfortunately, though, that probably won't happen, even though the game is in early access. The game's last update was in November of 2024, and Golden Pick Games seems to have moved on to other projects like My Aquarium and Dun Crush, an upcoming clicker RPG. In one of the Steam reviews, a user states, "Dev abandoned the game few days after release. He shut down Discord, went dark on these forums here, and told me after I hunted him down, I don't have time to make games." Which is entirely understandable, but at that point, maybe you shouldn't be charging money for those games. It also seems like the dev is working on other games, but just didn't want to try and fix the game that he had made. It's a tricky situation, but Necromancer's Revenge isn't getting fixed anytime soon, so at this point I just avoid it and appreciate what it tried to do from afar. Ship of Heroes is an MMO developed by Heroic Games Corporation. It was released on September 22nd, 2025, and currently has mostly negative review status on Steam, with 73 total reviews, 21% of those being positive. Ship of Heroes is one of the most overpriced games that I have played in this series of videos. This game costs $60 for the base game, all DLCs for 2 years, and a 1-month subscription. That might seem like a lot, but charging that much for this game is an insane ask. I understand that it's an MMO, and those are generally costly, requiring a lot of upkeep and large teams to ensure that they run smoothly, and content updates are applied well, but this game is nowhere near worth paying $60 for. Starting the game up, you're allowed to create a character. This involves picking one of 5 archetypes, which determine the powers that you'll ultimately get to choose. I ended up choosing a Devastator, a ranged damage dealer. You're allowed to choose your power set, which controls which powers you'll have access to as well. Fire powers, lightning, ice, dark magic, etc. And I have to admit that character creation is probably the best part of the game. The promise that Ship of Heroes has in this stage is huge. I made my superhero named Mr. McDonald's, a man sent from an alien planet to feed on savory beef and crispy french fries. But while the character creator can be robust, the bugs and lack of attention to detail already start to show themselves. I mean, even certain items like Asian gloves, who knows what that means, make your arms just appear invisible. When you start the game, it just says, "Officer Rick needs your help," and then you can go talk to Officer Rick, I guess, to help him. This sets you down a series of quests where you'll be helping the ship get rid of enemies that are trying to infiltrate it. See, even though this looks like a large city, this is actually a city on a ship in space, far away from Earth and far into the future. The game has us simply helping out various people around the ship who need protection or have us fighting off enemies. Whether these are Prometheans or Nagdalians, not much really changes. My character had ice powers and some healing/buff powers. Those were the powers I chose during character creation because there was no meat and cheese Ray option, unfortunately. Thankfully, I could still spread the Mr. McDonald's message all over town. Most were not receptive. These attacks are very simple, and the combat system is really nothing special. I could use an ice attack that would do damage over time and was stackable. I could use an ice ray that was a single target damage but had a longer cooldown. After leveling up, I got a new ability that allowed me to power up my ice skills for a few seconds and shoot out a ray of frost that targeted multiple enemies in an area. The only thing that this combat system has, setting it apart from others, is a whole lot of jank. You can't really cancel attacks once you've started them, meaning that once you start a cast, you're basically locked in. The camera is abysmal and slow, meaning that you constantly have to adjust it for movement to even be tolerable. Interactables almost never work the first time. You might as well just get used to spam clicking stuff to get it to work. And you either have to deal with the auto-targeting system or target enemies by manually clicking on them, which is incredibly annoying. Also, not to mention the fact that the game often keeps your target locked on enemies that you've already destroyed, so that when you walk away, the camera jumps back to where the enemy was before you destroyed it. There's so much jank here, not to mention the fact that everything looks cheap and bland. The textures, for the most part, are incredibly basic, either flat panels or just very small shapes meant to break up walls and such. The lighting is awful, leaving the game either looking like an overexposed mess or a foggy nightmare. Half of the progression systems don't make sense, and the tutorials are not great at explaining things, even though they hold your hand the whole time. The quests are also just insanely tedious. The first few missions that I did outside of the tutorial required me to infiltrate some buildings and destroy some targets there. Kill the enemies on the first floor, and then when that's done, head up to the second floor and kill the enemies there. And then when that's done, kill the enemies there and head up to the third floor. And then when that's done, yay, you've completed the mission. Now head back, get another one, and do the exact same thing in essentially the same building with the same assets, just moved around in a couple different places. There was eventually a point where I got to a mission that required me to find and defeat one specific enemy, a hacker or something named Reboot that was aligned with the Prometheans. I'm not sure, but I figured this would be the mission where I could get a boss fight or something. Maybe I would see some interesting part of the game that I didn't expect, and I was just experiencing the slog of introductory quests that most MMOs have. But when I found Reboot, I got into a fight with him, and he literally just stood there while I killed him. I did eventually get to a boss fight, but it was lackluster to say the least. That was sort of the point where I realized this game had nothing to offer. Also, I'm pretty sure most of the voices in the game, if not all, are AI, so that certainly doesn't help.
Welcome to the Justice Corps. The forms are all automated, so you can start fighting right away. I've got contacts who could use a hand, or you can just patrol the city and look for trouble.
I think this game is trying to fill the shoes of something like City of Heroes, a pretty popular MMO based on superheroes that shut down in 2012. I actually remember playing the game very briefly when I was young and enjoying it, but honestly, after some private servers got shut down over the years, City of Heroes has an official fan server that's licensed by NCSoft called City of Heroes Homecoming. You can go play that game now if you want, and from everything I heard, it's great. This game, like a lot of others on this list, just doesn't bring much new to the table, in addition to being incredibly janky and, in my opinion, ugly. The game has a ton of bugs too. I just got to a certain point in the game where too many quests were bugged for me to even continue. Apparently this game has been in development for 7 years as well. And listen, I'm sure this is a small team that's had a quite ambitious idea, and it's probably a miracle that it even works, because MMOs are incredibly hard to make and notoriously hard to make money off of. But people also aren't very happy with the developer's response to the reactions about the game either. In a post on the Steam forums where a fan was lamenting the fact that the game costs so much when City of Heroes Homecoming is 100% free to access, a developer responded and said, "The one change we made prior to launching was to lower the price a bit. Your level of hysteria over old news is a really good example of a trollish comment. You really nailed the troll part of it." And this user was banned from the discussions board. This same developer has been arguing in the Steam discussions with people about everything from how the game looks to how their game is actually a good value for the amount of money they're charging. Most of the advantages that this game notes that it has over other games, though, are just that it has new content and that players don't want to keep doing the same content over and over again. But if you play Ship of Heroes for 30 minutes, you're already going to start doing the same content over and over again. In another one of the developers' posts, they decided to respond to a lot of the criticism and questions that they've been having, specifically the price of the game, which they've already said that Steam won't let them change until the 30-day window from release has passed. But they also decided to list why their game is different from other games on Steam. Ship of Heroes is one of the very few brand new MMORPGs. Even more, we're an MMORPG that has several unusual and impressive features. One of these is that when you play, you can massively customize your character's appearance, and even write a short backstory for your character that other players can see and read. Very, very few MMORPGs even come close. Ship of Heroes has some of the best MMORPG character creation tools in the world, as far as we can tell. Yeah, no MMO has ever had a good character creation tool before this one. They also espouse the fact that they like the style of the game and that you can have 50-plus person raids, which makes the game stand out. Oh, and also they can keep the FPS well above 30, which is fantastic. And then recently they made a post claiming that their game was being review bombed, which is kind of insane. Most of the reviews for the game do not have a ton of time on the game, but honestly, it doesn't take a ton of time to figure out if you like this game or not. Its flaws are pretty clear from the start. Also, most of the reviews listed do not have the product refunded tag. There are some, but honestly, this just looks to me like negative feedback that the developer isn't happy with. And instead of taking the criticism and trying to make the game better, they're just blaming it on trolls and people that want to mess with them. In reality, this game is just not worth the money. You might get a fair amount of content for how much you're paying, but that content is not good. It's like if someone told me that I could spend $60 to get 1,000 pounds of rotten pork, or $10 to get 1 pound of fresh chicken. Sure, that's a lot of pork, but I'm not going to eat it. Accretion is an action strategy simulation game, I guess, developed by Valar Ferris, and it was released on May 15th, 2025. It currently has negative review status on Steam, with 11 total reviews, 9% of those being positive. Accretion is a game that's in the same vein as Agario. If you aren't familiar with that game, it is a browser title that allows you to play with other people. It's a very simple concept. You start out as a small circle, and you consume circles that are smaller than you to grow larger. Accretion adds a lot more to this formula to, in some ways, introduce unique mechanics to the simple idea that Agario presents, and in other ways to complicate things unnecessarily. Accretion is themed around celestial bodies. When you start, you're a small gas cloud, and unlike Agario, there are no neutral circles flying around that you can consume. You have to consume or feed off of other masses that are similar size than you. Every object has a size, and if it's red, then you quickly know that it's larger than you. As a gas cloud, you have a small gravitational circle, but consuming other gas clouds will increase your mass, and once your mass gets to 0.1, you become an official planet. This increases your gravitational circle and gives you a power. This happens with every large increase. At a mass of 1, you become a star. At a mass of 100, you become a high mass star. At 1,000, you become a black hole, and at 100,000, you become a supermassive black hole. I struggled to understand this game for quite a while, mainly because there are so many confusing mechanics, and they aren't really explained outside of this lengthy help card that you can access in the menu. But honestly, once I did figure everything out and understand it, the game became a lot easier and wasn't as bad as it seemed. Despite that, I don't think the game needs as many complicated mechanics as it has, and it does have some slight balance issues. Once you become a planet, you unlock a mechanic to switch to the third dimension. This allows you to avoid having your mass stolen from other planets. It's incredibly useful because there's a very annoying mechanic in this game called planet cracking. Once you become a planet, and every type of mass above it, you are solid. So if the body of your planet or star touches another solid body, then the shell begins to crack. This means that you quickly begin to seep out mass, and it happens fast. At certain points, this would happen to me and I would go all the way back to being a gas cloud from a star. To prevent this from happening, you have to follow stars or planets you want to harvest mass from without touching them, or just use your dimension switcher ability, which charges pretty quickly over time. When you become a star, you gain the ability to have planets revolve around you. When you become a high mass star, you gain the ability to stop planet cracking once it happens. When you become a black hole, you can create an accretion disk, which increases your mass pull from other objects by a lot. And when you become a supermassive black hole, you gain the ability to fire jets that take mass from anything they hit. This is the gist of the game, and of course the goal is just to keep increasing your mass until you eventually get consumed by something else or give up or complete the challenge that you're going for. But there is a whole other mechanic that I didn't even get into in my first hour in this game that's kind of completely unnecessary and very hard to understand, even when you're reading the game help card. So in the game, there's this a little ability card on the left side of the screen when you start. This ability allows you to attempt to develop intelligent life on your celestial body. There is a percentage here, which is the success rate. Sometimes this takes mass from you, and I'm honestly not sure what makes that happen or not happen. But if you're able to develop full intelligent life on your planet or star or whatever, then you will get these automatic abilities that just start happening. These completely clog up the screen. Random icons floating around you, satellite models twirling in the air. It's just far too much to be able to focus on the actual game. Now, the abilities themselves do a ton of different things. Some of them increase your gravitational pull, your movement speed, the speed at which your planet fixes cracks in its shell. There's a ton of them, and they can all be upgraded from the technology tree. Now, I will say that once this game actually clicked for me, it was pretty fun. It isn't multiplayer though, so it's not providing the same competitive and quick nature that Agario is. It's also considerably slower than Agario, meaning that it's actually going to take a long time to get to the later stages of the game. But it is kind of interesting. The game looks really cool. There's a lot of neat space warping effects that happen here, and it's just an interesting concept for a game in the first place. I honestly think this game is like really close to being something unique. It's definitely not deserving of the rating that it has, and I enjoyed some of my time with it. But there are also a ton of mechanics that do not need to be here, and they push players out of the game as soon as they enter it because most of them are probably expecting a somewhat simple experience. But Accretion actually takes a good hour or so of trial and error to even figure out what's going on. Once you break through that wall, though, you find a pretty interesting game that's mostly undiscovered. It's nothing that's going to blow you away, but it is at least something new, and it's trying, so I give it points for that. Campus Life is a life simulation game developed by Game4matic SA and was released on September 15th, 2025. It currently has mostly negative reviews on Steam, with 72 total reviews, 29% of those being positive. Campus Life is about the controlling and simulating the life of a student at a new university. It falls into the same genre as The Sims or something similar. Our created character has stats, both ones that represent their type of character and their current needs and wants. The goal here is essentially to do well in school, meaning passing classes, while also making friends and fulfilling the needs of your character. You also have to manage your money and ensure that you have enough to pay tuition at the end of every week. Every day we have a class schedule we need to follow. At certain times we have classes, and attending them either requires us to wait for a bar to continue and spending some energy, or we also have to play a little mini game. These mini games are incredibly simple, either sliding puzzles, timing games, or just simple button presses. All classes require some amount of energy and joy to complete, the amount of which depends on what level of focus we choose to use. We can either use full focus, average, or low. The lower focus, the worse we do in class and the less energy we expend. Energy is regenerated by sleeping through the night, by getting coffee from a vending machine, or eating food. But we have other stamina concerns. Joy is regenerated by partaking in extracurriculars. Hunger is regenerated by eating food. Thirst is regenerated by drinking water. And hygiene is regenerated by taking a shower. Having high ratings in these categories means that we perform better in class, that people like us more, etc., etc. Having low ratings means our performance suffers, so on and so forth. Managing these things isn't particularly difficult, and honestly, making time to get to all of our classes isn't really difficult either. That brings us to one of the largest issues with campus life. It's all theory and really no practical application. The idea of the game is interesting, but there's interesting concepts here. But the way the game implements them is just half-baked. There's a fraternity system in the game, and at the beginning, you're given the options to pick between 3 of them. They each have their own advantages and styles, but they don't really affect anything. As far as I could tell, I couldn't really see that there was any sort of quest line associated with the fraternities or any advantage to signing up to any of them, outside of the introductory quest. There's also just a certain rigidity to the systems. You have a class schedule, and in any downtime, you should probably go work because you need money for tuition. If you have enough for tuition for the week, then maybe you'll have some time to work on some of your skills or make friends with people. But there really doesn't feel like much of a point. There just really isn't enough to this game to warrant playing it for very long. A lot of the reviews point out the fact that the game is a bit buggy and clunky. I didn't find very many bugs, and I assume this is because the game has had a lot of updates since it was released. It honestly almost feels like it's in early access, even though the 1.0 is already out. There are things I enjoy about the game, like while the class schedule is rigid, the actual display of all your appointments is pretty nice. You can also just slide anything into your schedule that you'd like to add very simply. And the game is functional, aside from some slightly janky camera work and controls, but I just feel like there needs to be some more added content before the game is really interesting. It captures the essence of the slog of real life rather than the essence of an idealized life. Like, maybe if each frat had its own associated storyline, maybe if the minigames were a little bit more dialed in, maybe if you could choose a major at the beginning of the game and schedule classes based on it, maybe you even have to participate in some sort of class auction at the beginning to get the classes that you want. I will say that one of the biggest pros that campus life has is that it let me accurately create a university Dr. Evil. I wouldn't recommend this game as it currently stands, but with the amount of updates and hotfixes that have been released already, I do actually expect improvements and more content to come to the game, and hopefully it's in a better state in the future. Ancient the Dimensions is an open-world survival crafting game. It was developed by Headstone Studio and was released on January 7th, 2025. It currently has negative review status on Steam, with 11 total reviews, 9% of those being positive. Ancient the Dimensions is a survival game in a long line of survival games trying to capture a section of an audience already far captured by what previous games have done. Ancient the Dimensions, aside from having a name that makes no grammatical sense whatsoever, is mostly functional. The game works, the controls are fine, there are little to no bugs in the process, but that's the best part about the game, that it works and manages to run without too many speed bumps. Everything else in the game is frustratingly simple and run-of-the-mill for a game made in 2025. In the game, we start off with essentially nothing, only a sword to fight enemies and wild animals with. We can interact with stones, trees, bushes, mushrooms, and animals to get a variety of different items. We can use stones and sticks to craft new weapons. We can use wood planks and sticks to make crafting tables and furnaces. These will allow us to craft further items like armor, iron bricks, and other construction materials. The whole goal is to level up, get stronger, build a settlement, and progress, I guess, but there isn't really much progression. I got sort of stunted at a certain point in the game because I couldn't find iron ore. There doesn't seem to actually be any crafting tools in the game. You mostly gain resources by interacting with items rather than actually using a tool on the environment. And iron ore was nowhere to be found on the map, despite needing it for the next tier of items I wanted to craft. There are also supposed to be vendors and villagers that you can interact with, but everyone that I approached just did nothing when I clicked on them. You can't really engage in combat with people outside of the basic enemies like wolves and deer because they just run you over without the stronger weapons and armor. The combat is also a little weird. The weapon that we use determines what type of attacks that we do. The attacks are a bit sluggish, even though the system is reliant on stamina and accuracy of inputs isn't really there. The system seems to rely on precision, even though there's almost a complete lack of precision here. And I'm sorry, because even if iron ore was present and I could interact with people, then this would still just be an incredibly boring attempt to recreate something that other games already have. There are far more complex examples of survival games out there. There are far more interesting examples out there. There are far more unique examples out there. This game just doesn't bring anything to the table, even if it does work. The game still is in early access, but hasn't been updated since July, so maybe it's possible that the devs are working on a huge update that's going to introduce a ton of mechanics and fixes, but as it currently stands, I just don't see it. This game is a symptom of a larger problem with games as a whole. First of all, not understanding why games or trends are popular in the first place, and then trying to just one-for-one recreate that success and not introduce anything new to the formula. Understanding is the first step to figuring out who your audience is going to be, and just trying to redo what someone before you has done in the hopes that something will magically happen and it will catch on is just folly. I wouldn't recommend this game, mainly because it's just bland and not really worth your time. There are 100 other games just like this one on the market, and some of them probably function better and have more to offer than Ancient the Dimensions. Mindseye is a third-person shooter developed by Build a Rocket Boy, and it was released on June 10th, 2025. It currently has mixed review status on Steam, with 1,138 total reviews, 44% of those being positive. I played Mindseye when it first came out, originally intending to cover the game for a video. But about an hour or so into the game, I couldn't even continue. The game was so broken on release that I got to a certain mission where the entire game had slowed down to like 1/10 speed. This was on low settings, by the way, on a fairly powerful rig. Months later, I've returned to the game and I can now say that I can get past that mission, and the game sort of runs fine on medium settings, but definitely not high or ultra. The game is now playable, but I'm certain that the waiting and time were not worth the game that Mindseye has been hiding from me these past few months. I mean, let's be honest, I knew that all along. Mindseye is a game that fancies itself a new take on the Grand Theft Auto formula. Well, sort of. That's at least what the game wants you to think. That's how it draws you in with its Siren's song, wistful singing that lulls the uninformed customers into a false promise that you don't need to wait for Grand Theft Auto 6 because you have Mindseye. This is also because the director for the game is Leslie Benzies, the main producer for a lot of the Grand Theft Auto games from 3 to 5. Benzies was eventually ousted from the company and tried to sue for unpaid royalties, and Take-Two eventually settled outside of court for an undisclosed amount. Somehow, Benzies convinced investors to give him £32 million for this game and the larger platform that this game is a part of, called Everywhere. I heard of Everywhere far before I heard of Mindseye. I remember old headlines stating that ex-Rockstar devs were developing a game creation system, and a teaser trailer was eventually shown at Gamescom 2022. Mindseye was supposed to be the launch title to sell this game creation system. You can clearly now tell that this whole venture was a massive failure, not only chasing the trends of Grand Theft Auto, but also Roblox and Fortnite, attempting to make a larger system that can monetize player creations rather than the developer's own creations as well. Mindseye is the distillation of chasing success. It feels like something developed and created by a boardroom of executives. You can feel the expensive suits through the screen, through the voices and in-game noise, except these executives feel 10 years off of what players actually want to enjoy. In the game, you play a character named Jacob Diaz, who starts a new job for the Silva Corporation. Just about everything in the game is parroting some sort of actual real-life figure or trend. Diaz received a Mindseye implant when he was in the military. There's an Elon Musk-like techno-oligarch in the game, a woman running for mayor of Red Rock City that has campaign decor that looks incredibly similar to a specific president of the United States. I have no problem with commenting on modern society, but there are good and bad ways to go about this. And this is something that the Grand Theft Auto games generally do as well, but they use modern trends and commentary to usually parody contemporary society. Those games have a lighter tone for the most part, jokers on the outside looking in and making fun. Mindseye takes itself a bit too seriously, and simultaneously not seriously enough. The gameplay is atrocious, even without the bugs and performance issues. In the game, we take jobs and work for a variety of people, all while Diaz tries to track down someone who can tell him about the chip in his head. These jobs and missions are incredibly boring. There is never a stopping point in this game, it just keeps going. It feels like a focus group developed trick to keep you playing. There's never a mission end screen. There's never a point where we've been told that we've completed something. You leave a building, drive 5 miles to the objective, complete it, head somewhere else, another objective, drive somewhere else, do it again. Most of this game is driving somewhere and listening to characters chatter about useless shit in the car.
I've got the pincer drone. I'm on my way to switch out this new lens.
Who's the lucky recipient?
Why don't you do it yourself? Lens, share pin with Charlie.
Let's see. Nice condo building in town.
The game knows this, too, so it provides the player with a little timer that they should try and beat on the way to their destination. Something to take your mind off of how useless this all is. Ooh, fun. The game is pseudo-open world as well. While there is a huge city right in front of you, you can't do anything in it. Mindseye is mostly a linear game. There are these small portals that you'll find on your way to objectives occasionally. These allow you to experience different memories, sometimes of Diaz's time in the war, and sometimes of entirely different people. They're usually action-packed challenges that honestly should just be in the main game in the first place, because half of the gameplay segments and action that you do get to take part in is just 5-minute shooting sequences, and then it's right back to driving again. I often hesitate to use the word scam when I'm talking about video games, mainly because I can't ever really intuit the developer's intentions. Unless I'm pretty sure that a game is just trying to get a quick buck, I try to steer away from that kind of stuff. But it's very obvious that Mindseye is trying to create an image, a perception from the outside before purchasing the game. It's trying to convince the player that you're going to get something that you're not. And the game's length is padded with driving sections and drones, so much that the player might get a few extra hours of bullshit for their $60. Mindseye was a total mess on release, and the developers have fixed the game so that it can now sort of run on your machine. But that doesn't mean that it should. Oxide Room 208 is a third-person survival horror game developed by WildSphere. It was released on July 25th, 2025, and currently has mostly negative reviews on Steam, with 19 total reviews, 26% of those being positive. Oxide Room 208 is a sequel to another game developed by WildSphere called Oxide Room 104. This game had mixed reception, with some noting its unfair difficulty mechanics that would increase the more that you died. 208 definitely goes in the opposite direction because it's so easy that it's almost pointless to even play. The game had my attention with the intro because it actually does have some interesting environment design and some passable aesthetics. It's not shockingly good, but shockingly good for a game on Steam with 19 reviews, so I was interested. But once I started to play the game, I realized why this wasn't bigger than it currently is. The game follows a character named Matthew, who I believe was the main character in the previous game as well. Matthew is accessing a computer with MindOS, and on that computer are 8 different folders, each marked with a character's name. Accessing these folders gives us a brief backstory and allows us to play said character as they try to escape a facility by reaching room 208. All of these characters start out locked in a fridge and must figure out how to escape. They are also all being tortured by a man named Doc. This man has a missing left hand, seemingly dismembered and replaced by some sort of mechanical apparatus. This facility also seems to be home to his many experiments, and those monsters cause problems for us around the facility as we try to find our way out. The game's story, while interesting in concept, is incredibly corny and poorly written. The idea itself is ambitious. To pull it off, you have to properly flesh out 8 different characters, all in a short period of time, which the game doesn't really do. A lot of the characterization is done through in-game memos and Doc yelling facts at us through the loudspeaker.
Yes, Catherine always has to do everything right. Everything has to be perfect. You'll always be in your father's shadow. You'll always be Daddy's little girl.
These come off as ham-fisted ways to deliver information, never anything that we're really piecing together for ourselves. It's all just told to us eventually, and then we know who the character is, but not why they are or how they are. Because this is so ambitious, it requires a lot of effort and precision to pull off, and Oxide Room 208 just doesn't have that at all. It ends up being a really corny Saw ripoff in the end. Honestly, at times it felt like some weird torture version of Twisted Metal, where every character wants to kill Doc and there doesn't feel like a canon answer to who does. Or maybe they all do and he's just immortal or something. But the game just can't carry this concept on its back. The dialogue and one performance in this game is also just incredibly corny.
That screamed at the top of his lungs. Wow. I hope you're not as useless as he is. And as for you, Catherine, don't be afraid to come to me. We'll have a good time playing together.
On top of that, the gameplay is atrocious. Most of the weapons have 1 or 2 different animations. They are very similar in the end, so the weapon you use doesn't feel like it matters that much. You can only carry 1 melee weapon and 1 gun, but again, it doesn't really matter because the fodder enemies all go down in 3 hits and barely hurt you. The teeth enemies go down in a bit more hits but are uncommon, and the larger enemies are mostly the same. There's like 4 enemy types in the game outside of bosses, and 208 just throws them at you as much as it possibly can. But these enemies almost present no threat. You can kill them very easily or just run right past them. And if you spend any time looking, then the game provides you with ample supplies to take care of them with. Also, the fact that you have to play 8 different characters and face all of these same enemies just means that the game stops being scary after like the 3rd time. It's all the same jump scares, all the same monsters, all the same environments. Literally, the same facility is used for all of these characters. Some of them try to trick you by starting the character's story outside, but soon enough they end up right back at the same facility. The room that you need to go to is in a different area, but it's the same place. And I think that's how the game tricks you at the beginning. It makes you think this is like a somewhat polished horror game that you just spent $30 on. So maybe it was actually worth it. But really, it's the same 20-minute experience repeated 8 times to justify that price. I will say that the game isn't just straight up garbage. It is trying. It's attempting to make an interesting horror story. It's trying to tell a longer tale through unorthodox means, and I appreciate it for that. It just doesn't really work out in the end. It fails on that premise, and the end result is a buggy, clunky, corny, ham-fisted mess that's not nearly worth the $30 that the developer is charging for it. Evercore Heroes Ascension is a roguelike game developed by Vela Games, and it was released on September 18th, 2025. It currently has mostly negative review status on Steam with 159 total reviews, 37% of those being positive. Evercore is basically a generic Hades ripoff that's structured like a live service game. This is because Evercore Heroes used to have multiplayer in some earlier versions. The game started in early access, and when it launched the 1.0 version of the game, the developers decided to stop supporting it and removed the online functionality. This is the reason for many of the negative reviews of the game, citing the fact that the multiplayer was the main reason that people wanted to play it in the first place. People surely weren't flocking to the game for its bland modern art style, because most of it is incredibly ugly. Just generic character designs that feel like they've been ripped from any big hero shooter in the past few years, and a UI that looks so replaceable that it could be mistaken for a mobile game. This game also just throws you right into it without any explanation. There's no tutorial, no intro. You're just in some sort of hub area and you have to figure it out for yourself. The concept is pretty simple though. There's just absolutely nothing to do. In the hub area, you can upgrade skills with currency from completing runs. You can change characters and unlock new ones, and you can start runs. The actual gameplay is basically the same as it is in something like Hades, but with far less features. You head through levels, completing different missions in different rooms called islands. These are basically the same thing over and over. Just kill a certain amount of enemies in a room. Completing a room allows you to make a choice between two rooms. Some of these give you gold, some of these give you skills that can be upgraded to make your character stronger for this specific run, and some of these give you currency that you can use to permanently upgrade your character back at the hub. The runs themselves are pretty simple, just kill the enemies, but the game isn't actually really scaled for solo play. Enemies feel like they take forever to kill, even with upgrade powers. 2 of the 3 starter characters are mostly support, a healing character and a tank. The only one that really seems usable is the Cinder character, who does mostly straight up damage instead of support. The character itself feels pretty bad to play though. The movement is sort of clunky and stunted. Using the skills doesn't always feel the greatest because they're sometimes staggered, meaning you have to time them to actually hit the enemies that you want to. Before getting to the final room, which isn't even a boss, but just a bunch of enemies that come at you in waves, you get access to a shop. Here, you can buy new skills or upgrade ones you have already equipped. Outside of that, this game just has nothing going on, and I honestly think the appeal of multiplayer was really the only thing holding it up. Like I said, the aesthetics are bland, the design is basic, the gameplay is subpar. There's a bunch of different characters, which roguelikes generally don't have, but the game isn't exactly balanced around it. And on top of that, even if you do complete a run, you barely get any currency for it. There's like no progression in this game. It takes forever to even move forward to get any stronger. In addition to the multiplayer being removed, it also just seems like the game was rushed out into its 1.0 before it was finished instead of canceling it. The game is basically unfinished with really only one area accessible, unless I just couldn't unlock the other ones. Also, not to mention that they never removed the early access tags from the game before releasing it in 1.0. Honestly, the only redeeming factor here is that the game only costs $10, so I guess the 2 hours I put into it was sort of worth it in the end. Thanks again for watching as we talked about another 9 of the worst reviewed games on Steam. Did you play any of these games? Was I correct, or were some of these underrated gems and I just missed them? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe as it supports the channel. You can also subscribe to the Patreon to join this list of fantastic people right here, and also get access to a ton of extra content only available over there. The link is in the description below. See you next time. Bye, Dad.